will high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power, a radio hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We hope everybody's enjoying the spring weather. We've got a great guest I'm meeting for the first time. You're going to get to know him as I get to know him. His name is Samanth Gopinath, and he's got a great band called The Gated Community. They are doing a CD release, a show for their new record, Goodbye Work, on June 1st at the Parkway Theater, the lovely Parkway Theater. Sunday, June 1st, the show's at 7 p.m. The opening act will be my good friends, Rich Mattson and Jermaine Gemberling. Sounds like it's going to be a great show with The Gated Community, a great six-piece band that I listened to the whole record last night, and I really enjoyed it. So, Samanth, welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
What, are you an academic?
I am. That's what I do for my day job.
And what is, so you can't say goodbye to work, but when you go to work, what do you do?
When I go to work, I teach classes in music theory and some cultural studies. And, I sit in meetings a lot. I, discuss student work with students. I have office hours or, different things like that. I mean, it's the sort of standard academic life, which is a busy but a good one if you can get a job like that.
Where do you teach?
I teach at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities.
The university that refused me entrance into their music program, I might add.
Oh, shameful.
But 30 years later, they asked me to write my memoir about my 30 years in the music business, the University of Minnesota Press. So I did get somewhat of a degree.
Brilliant.
So how did you end up in Minneapolis?
I was, finishing grad school on the East Coast and applied for jobs, and this was one of the places that I got a job offer, and so I came out here. But it was interesting because I did have family here. My uncle, who just passed away last August, he also taught at the U in the electrical and computer engineering department. So, he and, his wife, my aunt, and his children, my two cousins, were based here for many years. And then I also had a lot of friends from Minnesota, oddly enough, including two very dear friends, Matthew McDonald, with whom I was in a band out in Connecticut, and then Tom Campbell, who has, been a great friend. Both are great friends, and Tom has been a big supporter and a fan of my music. So
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Slidell, Louisiana.
Cool.
Kind of cool, kind of horrible.
Yeah, well, although the reason I say that is I used to book a blues club in town, Famous Dave's Barbecue and Blues, and occasionally I had some musicians that grew up there. So my experience with Slidell is there were some really good musicians that came out of there.
There were. Clarence Gatemouth Brown used to live there before he passed away. He's one of the better known blues musicians from that area. But Louisiana is an incredible place with incredible musicians. Obviously, New Orleans is a special place, but Shreveport has an incredible history. The whole Cajun country in Lafayette has an incredible history. Lake Charles and Zydeco. I mean, it goes on and on. Louisiana is doubtless one of the great music centers areas of our country. So that part of it was cool. It was just there were other parts that were tough.
I've got to turn you on to a great song that I've told my friends in the Radiators about that I think you'd really enjoy. It's by a songwriter named Paul Brady. It's called Lakes of the Pontchartrain. Have you ever heard that song?
No, I haven't.
Google it. You'll love it. You guys would kill it. Your band, The Gated Community, would kill that song. So where did you go to college then on the East Coast?
I did grad school at Yale, but before then I did undergrad at the University of Texas at Austin. So I was in years as well too.
one of the greatest cities in the world.
It
I
is
did my
amazing.
I did my very first gig in Austin in I think '84 at the Hole in the Wall,
Oh wow.
which was
Okay.
right next to the
Yeah, it's
campus.
right there. I remember that place.
And I was honored to be on. There was a DJ named Larry Monroe who had a long time show on KUTX, and uh, I got to know Larry. I was on his show several times, and he always, when I was down in Austin, we'd hook up after a shift, and I would just enjoy the incredible music in Austin, Texas.
I mean, it's another one of those great American cities with totally different kind of, music history and much closer to the music that I make these days. I mean, what sort of kills me is that, I moved there in the early 90s, and at the time I wasn't into country and folk music. I was into rock, which they had a great rock scene there too. But then I was also really getting into classical music. And so I kind of rejected a lot of the rock and pop that I'd grown up with, and started focusing on classical music. I had a background in classical piano, and it was, I really missed out. I mean, Townes Van Zandt did a show, just like, hundreds of feet from the dorm where I was staying. I mean, it's
Cactus at the
totally insane,
Cactus Cafe, right?
Cactus Cafe, exactly. And I did do an open mic there. I mean, it was interesting that where I did a couple of my songs, and one of them went over pretty well. And I remember thinking, oh, this is kind of cool. Maybe I could get into this, but the classical music thing just took me over. And I don't regret it. I love that music, but I missed out on a lot of other things, and I have some sadness about that.
When I was reading your bio, you had quoted as one of your influences three men that became friends of mine over the years, the Flatlanders.
Oh, they're great. Yeah.
Did you ever get to meet any Butch or Jimmy Dale Gilmore or Joe Ely when you were down there?
Not when I was down there. I've met them up here, actually.
Okay.
Joe's played. He's not doing that well now health wise, but he used to come up really regularly, and I saw him, at least a handful of times, and got to chat with him, at length after shows. He's such a nice guy, and you just like share a drink or some whiskey with him, and he'll just tell stories. And so Joe's an amazing person and such an incredible musician, one of my heroes. And I had a pretty lengthy chat with Butch Hancock one time. I didn't get to talk to Jimmy Dale, though he's also one of my heroes, and he's also amazing. But yeah, those guys are incredible, and they've just done so much great music and so much for music in that area. And yeah, it's really cool. It's great that you're friends with them.
Well, and it's whatever wherever they get their water from in Lubbock, Texas, needs to be studied by other cities, because not only were those guys from there, but Jesse Taylor, an old running buddy and guitar player in the Joe Ely band, one of the first iterations, and of course Buddy Holly.
Sure. Yep.
One of my claims to fame was when I think it was in the '90s, Butch Hancock had a little kind of an art shop performance space in downtown Austin called Lubbock or Leave It.
Nice.
You remember that?
I don't. I mean, yeah, I was disconnected then. I probably would have been there when I was there.
Oh, you would have loved it. It was, Butch is not only an amazing songwriter, but he's an architect and he's a carpenter, and just, a real Renaissance man. And one of my claims to fame was when I was down there driving around downtown, I saw him carrying lumber into Lubbock or Leave It. So I spent an afternoon with Butch carrying lumber into whatever the hell he was building. Amazing. But I was so glad to hear you were influenced by them. And you also said in your bio that your parents' record collection had a big influence on you.
It did. I mean, it's, it would be a more of a kind of folk and pop influence than country. I mean, my dad loved Hank Williams's Jambalaya, and he used to sing it all the time. But I think it was as much sort of pop covers of it that I heard growing up. Right. But he also used to, play Beatles records, and the Beatles were a huge influence on me. Yeah, it was sort of a strange thing. Like I would say my dad's, he's born in 1941. He's from India, but he, moved to the US, and it has that kind of history of being very influenced by the folk revival. And so
Yeah.
like Peter, Paul and Mary and the Brothers Four and the Kingston Trio, that was kind of stuff that he loved. And so, I got into the kind of country thing from an angle, country and folk are closely related, as you know.
Yeah.
But it was, so that was like the starting point, I would say. But when I moved down south, for me, country music became the sort of sound of my bullies, and of people who were mean to me, or people who I felt like not connected to, And so, yeah, it was really, I would say the key moment was in grad school. I met a great singer-songwriter named Rob Slifkin, who's also a very good friend. And I joined his band. He basically asked me, do you want to join my country band? And I thought, sure. And I had really no real idea what that was.
Right.
I'd gotten into the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack. And
Sure.
This music is good music. I have not been adequately appreciating it. And I loved Lucinda Williams's Car Wheels on a Gravel Road. And I thought, okay, there's something here that I got to explore. And then I started writing a country song, and it was my first one. And it just had something that my other songs did not have. And I realized there's something about this genre that I'm connecting with, and I kind of don't get this, and I want to see what happens. And so, yeah, that was about 24 years ago. 22 years ago. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the piano player by the name of Floyd Kramer?
Sure. I love his playing, and I imitate it sometimes.
Because when I've auditioned piano players in my band over the years, the first question I ask them, are you familiar with Floyd Kramer? Because that guy's got a left hand that goes on all day long.
Yeah, he does. And then I love what he does with the right hand, all the slip note stuff. It's so beautiful and elegant. He plays melodies, but then he can do arpeggios. I mean, he's a master. He kind of invents a whole sound of country music playing that a lot of people just copy today.
Yeah, he's, as what he is to the edge, what Chet Atkins was to the guitar, Floyd Kramer was to the piano.
Yeah. Atkins is amazing too. Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to some early Louvin Brothers recordings and appreciating that Atkins was in the band. Like that was one of his earlier gigs, which is pretty cool, before he became the big RCA producer star and guitar hero and stuff.
Oh, Chet was the man. We've got Samarth Gopinath on from his band, The Gated Community. They're doing a CD release party tomorrow night at the Parkway Theater at 7 p.m. With their new record, Goodbye Work. Opening act are the phenomenal duo, the Johnny Cash and June Carter of northeastern Minnesota, Rich Mattson and Jermaine Gemberling. We're going to listen to the title track of the Gated Community's record, Goodbye Work, and then be back for the whole show with Mr. Gopinath. Thank you, and don't touch that dial.
Goodbye clan, got no perk but driving this can. It's a big mistake and the time is now. I will be at the back of the van. Goodbye game, goodbye team. This is shame that the life you're seeing. It's a crime to call it at the time of close. It will be someone's broken dream. Goodbye, son, you did try. Time to run, for they crush this sky. It's a brand new start that I can't not take, and the means will justify it. Goodbye world, I am gone. Toes are curled and I can't hold on. It's a grand idea that'll take with me. Wall of Power Radio Hour.
That means you're back with the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We're having a most enjoyable conversation with a man I'm just getting to know for the first time, Sumanth Gopinath. And he's the leader of the band, The Gated Community. Tell us a little bit before we get into the history of the band. Tell us a little bit about that title track, Goodbye Work.
Sure. Yeah, it's a song that, like a number of the songs that we've done, that I dreamt part of it. So I woke up one time, and this might happen to you too, but I just had something in my head, and I realized I was dreaming playing it at the piano and singing it. It was a very literal dream. And so then I got up and then started doing it and then adjusting it. It sounded a little too much like Baba O'Reilly by The Who, and I started this to the chords and the bass notes and stuff. And then, the phrase "goodbye work" was part of it, and it's something that I think a lot of people are thinking about these days. From AI and automation to the anti-immigrant deportations to just the stagnant economy to warfare. There's so many different factors that are affecting the future of work and what it means to people. And so this is a kind of ambivalent song about that. There's some aspects of it that feel like it's kind of valedictory, like it's sort of celebrating and taking leave from work in an almost anthemic way, but it's also kind of sad, and yeah, so it tries to deal with that contradiction in some way.
What you just said about waking up from a dream and having a song in your head. I don't think there's any greater example than when Keith Richards woke up and had the riff to Satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, I wish that would happen more often to me, but I'm glad you were able to capture that. So when did the Gated Community actually start?
So we started in 2006. So I was living in an apartment in the Holzerman building on the West Bank.
Party there many a nights over there.
Yeah, it's a great place, and I made a lot of friends there. It was my introduction to Minneapolis when I moved. I moved there. I didn't really know where I was going, and I found out about this place and thought, well, this seems like a cool place. And I moved there in the summer of 2005, and I loved it. And I still have friends from, who were there when I was living there, and I loved it. And it was a cool scene. And I felt like I was plopped kind of right in the middle of this very vibrant music world. And then gradually came to kind of learn about the whole history of the West Bank and the musicians there, and going back to the 60s and stuff. And it was, Willie Murphy and Kerner Ray Glover and, the Cedar Cultural Center. There's so much, and I only know some of it, but so that's when it started in 2006. And I had this idea for the name of the band. It was inspired by the Billionaires for Bush protest group. I had been, while out on the East Coast, many of us went to New York for those big Iraq and Afghanistan invasion protests, hoping, against hope, that maybe we could prevent it from happening. And there was this protest group, and they were all dressed up in this kind of, fancy party outfits and Monopoly Man costumes and evening gowns. And they'd sort of be making fun of the protesters as they were walking by. And I thought, this is funny. Like, I like this. And so the band originally had a more kind of satirical, novelty music based kind of approach. And then over the years, it's kind of become, I would say, more serious and heartfelt and earnest. So, but yeah, it's some of all that is in the band even today.
So when did you really become politically aware?
It happened in grad school. I was definitely not a politically, knowledgeable young person. And my parents were liberal Democrats, and in Louisiana, in the most conservative parish in the state, it meant something, and they still are. And so that informed me for sure. But then when I went to grad school, one of the first things that one of my classmates asked me was, do you want to join the union? And I thought, sure, I'll join the union. I had no idea what that meant. Right. And so then I started getting involved and organizing and talking to my colleagues and talking to other union workers on campus. And the whole like labor movement in New Haven, Connecticut and around Yale University is pretty amazing. And they were just really welcoming and helped like sort of inspire me to learn a lot more about, U.S. politics and labor history and, leftist, philosophy and stuff. And so, yeah, I just kept reading and, having conversations with people, and it was transformative. I would say that period really changed me in terms of making me think, seriously about politics.
Well, when I have to ask you, at some point then, especially with being aware of the union, at some point you had to get hip to Woody Guthrie.
Sure, definitely. And then that came afterwards, I think, once I started learning about labor history and politics, and then got into Bob Dylan, and then Guthrie came later. But Guthrie is incredible. I mean, he's such an incredible musician. Those songs still really they sear themselves into your brain. It's clear why he was so influential.
And they're as important today as when he wrote them in the 40s and early 50s.
Totally. And some people say like he's the one of the reasons why country and folk sort of get separated, right? Because it's a political thing.
Right.
And, really, I mean, you could just think of him as a country musician. I mean, how much different is he from Jimmy Rogers or, any of the other like singing, sort of singer-songwriters? We don't use that term then, but that's what he was. And singing songs, and, he's of that tradition.
Well, and, and Jimmy Rogers and the Carter family, where Woody borrowed melodies from, were huge influence on Woody. Do you guys do any Woody Guthrie songs?
We don't. I've never thought about it. I always felt that Woody was so singular, a little intimidating to cover. We do some Dylan. We do a version of Odds and Ends that I sacrilegiously wrote a bridge to, yeah, it's a good challenge to think about what Woody song to do. There are a lot of amazing ones.
The Gated Community, that's Woody Guthrie. I see that project on your horizon.
Yeah,
so tell me, Sumanth, how did you've got a 6-piece band. Tell me the history of how you started to meet fellow band members.
So some of them came from the U when I was first starting the band, and we met up in my apartment. Grad students and faculty members. And then as it sort of grew and changed over the years, I was also playing in another band, a kind of indie pop band led by Ryan Stokes called Quarter Stance. And members of that band joined the Gated Community as well. And then through that band, I first met Katie Harris, who's a member of this amazingly talented Harris family, and Katie and then her sister Rosie and then their brother Matty Harris are all incredible musicians. And so and then their spouses and partners kind of also like made their way to varying degrees into the band. First Katie and her husband, and then Rosie, and then her late husband Johnny Becker, and then Matty has played. He's a saxophonist and jazz musician, but he's played on one of our tracks. And yeah, so I would say they became kind of the anchor into a community beyond the U and the sort of Quarter Stance, band scene, who are also transplants.
Before I forget, because he passed away a few years ago, but people around the country remember him so fondly, and he played on Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. But the great mandolinist and violin player Peter Ostrushko lived in the Holzerman building.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
among some other cool people. But yeah, wow. that building has a lot of history. So where was the first gig for the Gated Community?
Gosh, this is a good question. It might have been at Maps Cafe, which was a little cafe down by right now on the corner of Cedar and Riverside, where I think Afro Deli now is.
Okay.
And, it was a cafe owned by a Turkish family, and they were super supportive of us. And they still have their cafe in the Midtown Global Market. So
cool.
I go there, I like to see them. I think they probably gave us our first gig, and then I think we were playing at the Acadia and some other places around there, and then kind of built up from there.
So how many shows, what is your playing schedule? How many shows in let's say a month's time do you do?
It varies a lot, but I would say I'm trying to look up my gig schedule here because of the Parkway thing, and the kind of radius clause thing. We aren't doing
Right. Oh, yeah, I get it.
shows, but yeah. So we're doing a show in Wisconsin on tomorrow at River Time. It's kind of a warm up show for our release. It's in it's Pepin in Wisconsin.
Yeah, Lake Pepin, sure.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there. And then we're going to do a record store show at Barely Brothers Records on June 28th. July 11th, we're playing at the White Squirrel, where we play with some frequency. And then, Beth and I, my partner, who's also in the band, we do a lot of duo shows or trio shows with Rosie, the other main lead singer and banjo player, Rosie Harris. And so I counted last year, we did about 43 gigs. So
yeah.
It's a sizable amount, maybe approaching one a week.
Yeah. Well, I've had the pleasure of playing at the Parkway a couple of times. I did my 30th anniversary in town, my 40th anniversary. Unfortunately, the night that the Vikings played the Packers in Minneapolis, but it's a beautiful room. I highly recommend it. I think my buddy Lauren Wicklander is the main sound guy down there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, you're going to really enjoy it. I remember when I did my 30th anniversary, it was called Skyway to Hell, and I had a bunch of my fellow musicians I'd met over the years and played. And I had one of my buddies goes, Metzl, what's the difference between your club show and your theater show? I said, $25 at the door.
It is kind of like that. And there is a difference with this show in that we have someone joining us on keys, because keyboard is my main instrument. I'm, pretty mediocre guitarist, but I managed to make it work, but I'm half decent on the keyboard. And so I add piano and electric piano and organ parts on the albums, but I never do them. And so now we've got a great musician, Sven Erik Olsen, who's been in the cities and doing music for a couple of decades and has a great band called Paperbacks. And he's joining us on keys. And so for the first time, I think we're going to sound pretty close to the way we sound on our albums. And that's pretty exciting.
Well, it's a really enjoyable record. It's called Goodbye Work, from my guest band leader of the Gated Community, Sumanth Gavanath. Tell us a little bit, before we hear another track of the record, your association with two of my really good friends, Rich Madsen and Jermaine Gemberling, who are opening the show.
Yeah, that's a great story. So last year, we were asked to close out or participate in the Fort Road Folk Festival that Martin Devaney had organized. And he's a great guy and a wonderful musician. And we were doing a show in Wisconsin. We'd already had booked previously. So we said, well, can we drive back and then close out the show, close out the night? And he said, that works for us. And so we did this festival out in Wisconsin and then drove back. And we got back in time to see Rich's band. And I'd heard of Rich, he's well known, but I had not heard him live. And Rich Madsen and the North Stars were playing the set before us, and he and Jermaine are in the band, obviously the kind of main presence of it. And they sounded wonderful. I really loved their music and thought they did such a great set. And so I was very taken with the music, and they really liked our set, which was really flattering. And then so I'd been thinking about them since then. And then it was actually at Palmer's Bar to see someone else who I'm now forgetting, but this was either in like December or January, and they happened to be there, and I reintroduced myself. They remembered me from the show, and just chatting with them a bit. And I mentioned that we were putting together this album release show, and Rich said, well, we'd be happy to open for you. And I was super honored. That's such a great thing. And so then we started working on it, and the booking process is complicated, as you surely know.
I do know.
But we ended up, after some time, getting this to work out. And so, yeah, I'm super honored and touched that they're
cool. And once again, the gated community is having their album release show on Sunday, June 1st, which is tomorrow, at the Parkway Theater. Showtime is 7:00, and Rich Madsen, Jermaine Gemberling open. We're going to listen to a track off the new record called Goodbye Work, and the tracks we're going to listen to is Hands in the Air, and then we'll be back with Sumanth for one more set on the Wall of Power, a radio hour.
Picture in the window lights up from behind. Richer is the meadow that we seek but fail to find. Was it you? Was it you? Was it you on the landing? Was it you? Was it you? Was it you? With your hand in the air. The poster isn't yellow, maybe orange, maybe green. With a man.
There's choppers enforcing a curfew. I'll get off the highway by 10. What I wouldn't give for your perfume to fill up my senses again. Please give my regards to your mother. It's not how I want it to be. I'll honestly say I've been better, just worrying, weed smoking me. The air's too heavy for.
You just heard Weed, Smoke, and Worry by the gated community. My guest is the band leader, Sumanth Gopinath. And during the break, he remembered who he went to see at Palmer's. And it's a perfect song to talk a little bit about good friends of mine and one of my favorite bands in town, the Front Porch Swingin' Liquor Pigs.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, because I lived right over there, I remember hearing them at the Viking Bar when they used to
Sure.
play there, and then later they moved their residency to Palmer's, and so yeah, I've been hearing them for a long time, and they're just wonderful.
I can't remember when the 400 shut down, but it was so amazing back in the day. I moved to town in 78, but it was so amazing just to go to the West Bank. You could, back then there was the new Riverside Cafe, which became Acadia. Next to that was the Extempore Coffee House. And then in that beautiful, before I moved to town, there was the Triangle, which was across the street from the Hard Times Cafe. But in the late 70s, early 80s, and into the 90s, you could go spend the whole night on the West Bank and go from Palmer's to the 400 to the Viking, hear great music at every bar, drink very cheaply, and hang out with some really cool people.
Yeah. I feel like I caught the tail end of it in 2005. I mean, it already had been changing, but the 400 was still open. The Triangle Bar was not. But um, yeah, there was the 400, there was Palmer's, there was the Acadia, there was the Triple Rock Social Club.
I hate the triple.
Um,
Sure.
yeah. The Bedlam Theater used to have shows too. There was the Nomad World Pub, which was previously the
Yeah.
Five Corners, or was it like something like that?
And
Seven-
was it in the Red Sea too?
and
Was
the
it?
Red Sea too, which we've done a gig there. Yeah. And so, a lot of those, and then of course the Cedar Cultural Center.
Right.
So there was and then a little further down, Whiskey Junction and the Caboose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, really just up and down kind of that long stretch of Cedar, there was so much live music, and it was amazing and overwhelming. And I loved it. I got to see a lot of great shows at every one of those venues. And and now I'm, thinking back then and realizing, a lot of it's still there, but definitely places are gone. The Triple Rock is no more, the 400's no more, Whiskey Junction is no longer, Yeah.
Yeah, it's times change and businesses and people move on. Let's talk about now. You've got a 6-piece band with a gated community. So explain the process. Who brings in the song and where does it go from there? How does it evolve?
Sure. So most of the songs are ones that I've written or they're covers, but like this last album are all originals. And usually I've written it. Sometimes I make a demo, but it's not like the band like sort of focuses on the demo. It's more like they want to just hear me do it live for them. So I'll just sing it, play the guitar and sing it. And then we'll often like just start trying it out. And I think if the band likes it, that's a big part of whether or not we do it or not. I mean, I don't think I've ever really pushed for a song that they have not wanted to do. So they're kind of my initial audience. And
Well, the
yeah.
beautiful thing about being a band leader is if they don't like the song, you can fire them.
No, it doesn't work that way for me. It's more like I always feel like I'm always auditioning for them.
Yeah, well put. Very humble. Tell us about the instrumentation in the band.
Sure. So I play acoustic guitar. Rosie Harris plays banjo. Paul Hatlelid plays drums. Cody Johnson plays bass. Nate Knutson plays electric guitar, sometimes mandolin. And then Elizabeth Hartman does auxiliary percussion, egg shaker mostly, sometimes tambourine. Sometimes she does more novelty things with a slide whistle or like a melodica. But that's the core of it. And then everybody sings lead on at least one song. That was one of the things that has grown over time with the gated community. I wanted more people to sing lead. So I often think about which songs will work well for which people. And then most recently, one of the songs you mentioned, Weed, Smoke, and Worry, that's the only non-me original in the band. Nate Knutson, the guitarist, wrote that one. And so
Good work, Nate. I love the tune.
yeah,
But you got the one thing I really loved about the record, Samanth, is that it's the harmonies. You've got a really nice vocal blend.
thank you. Yeah, that's something we really love doing. And the core of the harmonies are really me, Rosie, and Beth. The three of us have a kind of ability to just gel sonically. And we do a lot of shows where it's just the three of us. In fact, interestingly, last winter we did a Holodazzle show and it was so cold we couldn't play our instruments, but we just did a cappella music and we're like bundled up and singing, and it sounded pretty good. I thought, man, it's cool to just use our voices and sing and maybe have a tambourine.
Yeah.
No, that's something that's really important to what I love in music. I love vocal harmonies. I
Me
love
too.
bluegrass style of close harmony singing and other ways. I mean, if you're into the Beatles, you love their wild approach to harmonies, and there are many people who do it. But those things are pretty central to what we like doing.
Now, I imagine 6 people in the band. There's, people have families and kids. So when you were speaking earlier, Samanth, about just trying to book stuff, even with a duo with your partner can be problematic, but it's gotta take a while to figure out where you're going to play, what you're going to do, and then how far you can go out on the road and play.
Totally. It's the biggest challenge. You know, a couple of people in the band have kids, you know, everybody's got, you know, partners, family commitments, you know, something so it does make it complicated in terms of logistics. And the way we've kind of settled out in terms of how we try to do it is we have a calendar and we kind of try to get people to use it. People use it, you know, somewhat consistently, but not as consistently as we could. But that gives us a ballpark. And then we pitch dates to bookers, or sometimes bookers, as you know, they'll just give you a date and then we try to see if we can do it. And then I think often what it is we see who can do it. You know, usually if I can do something, Beth can do something, because we're partners in the same household. We're talking about our calendars regularly, so we kind of know where the other is, and then we kind of see who else can do it. And if it's viable, we then try to just, you know, kind of go for it. And usually, if we can do a show with even just the two of us, but 3 of us or 4 of us, that makes a full sound for the band. But and depending on the show, you know, we'll have drums or no drums. So we'll do a more acoustic, folky style, you know, bluegrass inflected approach, or we'll have drums and then Nate will play electric guitar and it'll be a more sort of country rock sound. So yeah, it just really depends on how many people are available and then what we choose to do in order to accommodate based on that.
Well, for everybody listening to this show, make sure you go out and see the Gated Communities CD release party. The CD is called Goodbye Work, Sunday, June 1st at the Parkway Theater, 7 p.m. with Rich Mattson and Jermaine Gemberling. One of the nice things about having a radio show is not only getting free books and music, but meeting cool people like you. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Me too.
We're going to have you on another show. I think there's a show here. I have a feeling you and I could talk literature, other music, and politics. I think we'd have a good time on that.
It would be wonderful. Yeah. And I've heard some of your music and love it. I think you're great. So it's cool to get to meet you.
Well, nice meeting you, and the best of luck. And I hope you blow the roof off at the Parkway.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to you soon, Sumanth. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show was produced by Paul Metza, engineered by Patrick Lilia. We'd like to thank our guest, Sumanth, topping off from the Gated Community. You can follow me at paulmetza.com. I got books and records out there. Find them on Amazon. Find them at the library. Find them at bookstores and record stores. And if you'd like to contribute to the show, I have a Venmo account at Paul-Metza. Like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.